Hello, everyone. My name is Adam Wingard, and I'm the director of this movie. And I'm so excited to finally be at this point where I'm sitting in a room comfortable and recording the audio commentary. I'm just going to jump right in. We just released the trailer a couple weeks ago, and that's been a real blast to see, to finally, be able to show people, anything in the movie. This opening actually, I'm going to probably be talking about stuff like this quite a bit throughout the movie, about how there's alternate versions of the film. I mean, uh, this was not the original opening of the film. It was something that came up, just as we were uh, deep into production. Originally, it started with Gia here out in the jungle, so this was all the same. But actually, starting with Kong as a character was something that we really didn't have quite the confidence to do until much later on. Once we really were able to see the monsters as characters, and being able to fully have the confidence of saying, what, like, we can treat Kong just like another human character. We can point the camera at him, and but that was an evolving process. That shot right there, I should give credit to Josh Schaefer. He's the editor, and when we were on production in Australia, he suggested that we throw something in that little montage of Gia running around to imply that there's something more afoot technologically within this opening. And actually, the thing that's in the tree back there that she runs past, the little piece of technology, is actually part of the heave. You can see it. It's a little thing on the front of the heave craft, and we just had it, and we didn't have any money for anything else, so we just took it off and threw it in a tree, and it looks like something. It looks like a projector or something like that. Um, yeah, I love this. This shot right here was one of those kind of right from the storyboard to the screen type of shots. Richard Bennett, who is one of my favorite storyboard artists of all time. He works with Christopher Nolan all the time. He came up with that idea of the staff that he's throwing in the air being sort of like a Apollo launch, shot, and it really stuck all the way through. Sector 7G, Simpsons fans will enjoy that part there. So this is a little bit of reshoot and a little bit of original shoot. So the first two shots in the sequence were in Hawaii, and then these shots here are over at WB, and they work together really nicely.
Rivalry stems from Iwi mythology.
He's got too big over time. This environment won't sustain much longer. It's too unstable.
These are some more U and Company, U and Co titles, which are really cool. Kind of laying in a little bit of a In Search of Unsolved Mysteries, colorful thing with the opening. Um, I'll talk a little bit about the music here right off the bat, just because music in my films has always been the most important thing to me. I think in a lot of ways. I always think about like how John Carpenter always said that every movie he did is really a Western. And I think in some ways, if I had to pick my own version, I would say every movie I've done is actually a musical in disguise. Even though I don't think I would ever actually do a musical. But this is really my first time doing a film that has a big orchestral, big Hollywood score to it, and I have to admit I was a little resistant at first. I really wanted to go much more of a synthwave route for the entire film, and originally I wanted to have Matt Pusty, who he's created the band Makeup and Vanity Set, And we ended up using one of his Makeup and Vanity Set songs. And he did some really cool stuff. It was very much more John Carpenter like. So then I started meeting with composers, and Junkie XL, Tom. He was by far, like, he was just such a big Godzilla fan, and we really hit it off right away. And he has that electronic kind of inspiration in his music and background, and so I was like, that was like, okay, I feel comfortable with this. He can do it all and give me everything I want. And he was very pro, the themes and all those kind of things. And I really came around on it as production went on, and especially when I saw the movie playing for an audience for the first time. It was like, this is not the time to rewrite the script on a score. It's like sometimes you got to just get in there and let those themes rip. And with this film, like, you'll notice that there's no pre-existing themes from the other Godzilla movies or Kong. We actually did everything from scratch, and we wanted. To us, I think it was like, Doherty did the true Godzilla throwback stuff, and the original themes, which are all just so gorgeous and great, and they work great in that movie. But for me, it was like, this is the legendary Godzilla, and this is a new Godzilla, and he's the villain in this movie. He's a different character, sort of, to a certain degree. So we wanted the score to reflect that, and Junkie came up with this great Godzilla theme, which I think really kind of lives up to the legacy, but it was also doing something new. But that was really a conscious choice to say, this is the legendary Godzilla, and he's got swagger. He's a badass. And I just to talk a little bit about Godzilla too, in general, and in the approach to this film. I mean, obviously, Kong has a very different look in this film. He's older. He's more scruffy. He's worn down. He's the gunfighter who's doesn't have a gunfight to keep him going anymore, and so he's kind of a little bit lost. And so he has like a much more aged kind of look from Skull Island. But this film is a direct sequel to King of Monsters, and even though the studio would have let me put my own kind of spin on Godzilla, just like Doherty changed the dorsal fins to be more classic, I kind of just wanted to keep them, exactly the same as you saw in the last film, because with this film, I wanted to be like, oh no, it's not like a new Godzilla and a new Kong and we're restarting it. I wanted it to really feel like this is a definitive Godzilla versus Kong, and that's what you're seeing here. And so that's kind of why we didn't really mess with Godzilla, even though in retrospect, I wish I made his head a little bit bigger, because his head is a little small, and it does hurt some shots where you're just like, really, his head is really small. He looks good. He's got his angles, and he's a great looking creature, but sometimes that head, and I hear that complaint a lot too. So, but sorry, those are the sacrifices you got to make sometimes.
Oh, it's from a toaster. Look at this thing.
I have to go to the bathroom.
Is it one or two? Because if it's two, it's probably from these Apple. And you want to use the hand sanitizer that I made?
I'm good.
Okay, I'll just stay here. That's great. What did they ship in Hong Kong? What's up, level 33? What the?
Evacuation. Titan alert.
That is my tube. That's my tube.
This was a sewage treatment plant. Actually, that last one was Australia. That's a shot from one in Hawaii. And, the secret of these sci-fi movies like this, especially monster movies, is you always end up shooting in sewage treatment plants, because they got all these miscellaneous pipes and they just look technical. So every one of these films always ends up in a sewage treatment plant for one way or another. There's our Apocalypse Now Godzilla intro. That was a late addition. This whole section here, was I would say the first 30 minutes of this movie went through a lot of different changes. There was a lot of different actual story points that were kicking the film off, and this is kind of where we landed. But I'll get into that a little bit later. That helicopter, the blades aren't actually turning; those are CG, but they look really great, and CG wind all around. So this section right here used to be part of a bigger sequence. This was actually a 4-day shoot of people running. You know, there's probably lots of extras in this right here that are actually, by the way, I should mention that my first AD was in that first shot of all the people running. He's in the foreground. But this sequence was shot in Hawaii, and it was like 4 days long of just like, you know, people running, and Millie Bobby Brown and Julian Dennison's character were originally in that sequence, being chased, and there was a big human stampede, and you know, all this stuff, and the sequence ended up changing, but we were able to kind of repurpose that footage for this right here. And there's a lot of that. I mean, it's shocking when you're doing a movie at this big budget level, and you end up repurposing more footage in weird ways than I've ever done on any movie. But you can't tell. It's, you know, and it's some of those things is what makes the movie feel big. You know, that you can just cut to a crowd of 400 extras for, you know, 4 shots and just be done with it. Whereas in actual fact, it took, you know, 4 days. This was actually shot during daytime. That was a different. That used to be a different actual Monarch base. That those were actually Monarch people getting blown up there, and in the production we ended up changing things around and repurposed that footage of those people blowing up. And my mom was actually there that day. It was a very proud moment. We got to stand off to the side while those Jeeps were exploding, and it was pretty glorious looking. Oh, this shot right here of Godzilla on screen, this is interesting because that's actually an unfinished VFX shot from the original opening of the movie. And so it's actually, I think it only went through one pass. It just had it was very unfinished if you actually saw it just by itself. But we needed a shot of Godzilla on the news. And so my VFX editor is a very clever guy. He just took his phone out and shook it around and filmed it off of his monitor. And we put it in there, and it looks like a finished shot. And, you know, there it is. It's in the movie. And, you know, it's funny. Like, it doesn't matter what budget level you're at. You're just always going to have to cut corners and get clever. And there's never enough money. Movies are always budgeted completely wrong. They're always budgeted, 30%, less than what you need, no matter what size. But it just upscales, because everybody wants more, and you got to figure out how to make it work. This was the first day with Millie Bobby Brown and Kyle, and it was really funny because this was the first time I really had a real inkling of how famous Millie was. She was not late to set, but she was one of the last ones to show up on set. And I remember all these extras, I think it was like 200 something extras, were just standing around this base camp. And, we're all just waiting, things are getting set up. And Millie shows up and kind of just, she's always in a great little mood, and she's kind of bouncing around. And she decides, we talk with Kyle, we're like, well, why don't we, run through your lines and, just see what this thing sounds like real quick. Very informal, no camera around or anything like that. And so they were just reading off the script. And I just noticed that suddenly the sound of 200 extras became dead quiet. And I looked over, and every single extra is just staring at Millie, and you can see them kind of whispering to each other. And, they were very excited. And I was like, wow, she's bigger than everybody here, it was pretty funny. So this was this was our big reshoot scene. We only had 1 day to do it, of course, somehow. It was 6 pages long.
My office hours are 9 to 5.
Please, Dr. Lynn. Guys like you and me, we don't do normal hours, do we? I've been fixated on Hollow Earth for as long as you have. Your theory that it's the birthplace of all Titans is fascinating.
Your book was very impressive.
Oh, yeah? Well, I got about 30 unsold boxes in my apartment if you want some.
Walt Simmons.
I know who you are, sir. It's an honor.
The honor is mine, as is the urgency. Godzilla has never attacked us unprovoked before. These are dangerous times, Dr. Lin. Allow me to introduce our Apex Chief Technology Officer, Mr. Ren Serizawa. He has an interesting thing to show you. Magnetic imaging from one of our new satellites. You know what this is, right?
Hollow Earth.
An ecosystem as vast as any ocean, right beneath our feet.
This energy signal is enormous.
And almost
And real quickly, I should talk about that. We kind of had a funny name for this scene as we were doing it, which was Beardgate, because Skarsgård, he'd just done The Stand, and when we were doing these reshoots, he was in the middle of production, and he had to have a beard for that, and he couldn't shave it. We ended up like trying to figure out like, okay, you know, what are we going to do with these scenes? And luckily, this one's his first scene, so it made sense that he had a beard. Fortunately, we were able to cobble together some footage from other scenes and inserted them in there, and it worked great. You never know. We changed quite a bit in this first half hour, but we had to do it very, very surgically. We ended up only having, I think it was like 5, maybe there was like a half a day for 6 days worth of reshoots, which is actually shorter than any of these movies have done. Generally, they spend about 2 weeks on reshoots and stuff, but we kind of came in this thing as one of these productions where we're like, well, let's see if we can come in on budget, and try not to, blow a bunch of extra money. And so it was a bit experimental, but we pulled it off. And I think to a certain degree, that's why probably hired me, because of my independent background. And I've done movies of all different budget levels, and I've always been pretty responsible, bringing things in on time, never gone over budget, and I'm very resourceful, I guess.
What if I told you that we at Apex have created a phenomenal craft which could sustain such an inversion?
I love holograms. It's so fun to finally be able to shoot a hologram in a movie. This is obviously very Star Wars holograms. Return of the Jedi came up a lot, and when we were talking about all this.
Help me. Help everyone. Finding this needle in a haystack is our best shot against Godzilla.
Well, I might have an idea, but it's crazy.
I love crazy ideas. They made me rich.
Are you guys familiar with genetic memory? It's a theory that all Titans share a common impulse to return to their evolutionary source.
like spawning ceramic.
Exactly. We're a homing pigeon. So if this is the Titan's home, and this life force sustains them,
A Titan could show you the way.
yeah. With a little help of an old colleague.
I just want to point out that I drew all those, all the art there. I really have fun doing kids art, like the one behind her head too, and a lot of those on the wall. Like the funny thing is, like you can never get the art department to do like real looking child art because they're all just they're too good of artists. They paint too much in the lines, and so I have a lot of fun sitting off to the side with a bunch of crayons, and the art department loves just giving me a bunch of art supplies and crayons and stuff and letting me go to town. But and I'm actually the type of guy that's like going around on set too, like, you know, showing people like, you know, like a kid, like, look what I did. You know?
He wreaked havoc on Kong's habitat. No way am I letting you drag him halfway across the world to use him as a weapon.
No, not as a weapon, as an ally. To protect us. Lead the way down there.
even makes you think that he'll go in?
You always believed that Skull Island was like hollow Earth come to the surface, right? And that's where Kong's ancestors came from. Through the entrance in Antarctica, we could help him find a new home. They could save ours. First, that power source may be our only hope. We gotta stop Godzilla. This is our only chance. We have to take it.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. But when it comes to Kong, what I say goes.
You name the terms. Thank you. Sorry. Thank you. Won't regret this.
I already regret this. Together. You, me. Come on.
If you could see me now, wanna say that
I'm the biggest Elvis fan of all time. I have an Elvis movie that I've been working on since the beginning of this production, and this song was the first piece of music that I found that was really inspirational to me. And I knew that I had to use it in the film. And from the get-go, I kind of thought that this would be the place for it. Like, lyrically, it's just so fun. Like, the tone of Elvis, I saw Kong as sort of like old Elvis, like just a little out of shape and, not doing too well. That's kind of like the, equating that. And then obviously, Skull Island being in the 70s, using a 70s Elvis song is totally the way to go. And so happy that it ended up in the movie. There was actually originally going to be one other Elvis song later on, but it didn't end up making it through. Probably for good cause, but one'll do. So this is in Australia. This is a really cool set. We built this set twice, once upside down, that we could lower in the water for later on during the action scene. And this is the normal right side up version. I love her little smile there. Gia, the actress, Kaylee, she's so amazing. She's one of my favorites ever. She's one of those just natural performers. She's actually deaf, and I'll be honest, like I took sign language classes for, I don't know, like 2.5 months or something, maybe longer, maybe 3 months, leading into production, and I was just so bad at it that I just ended up using a translator the entire time, because I just felt like I was going to embarrass myself. And she was very no nonsense. I was actually more intimidated by her. I mean, like the audition process for Gia was really funny, because they were looking for a very specific type of person, and deaf actors, they don't really get a lot of opportunities, I think.
Charged to light up Vegas for a week. Feel free to be impressed.
Wow.
Kaylee, I think, had done like a commercial, I believe, like an app commercial. But they found her, and we kind of I didn't actually see a lot of people for that role. The casting director saw a ton, but they whittled it down to about, I think, 6 people. We picked 2 to see. And the other, we saw a boy and a girl. She was obviously the girl, and the boy was I think 6 years old, and he was just too young. I mean, like when we brought him in for auditions, it was just, he was a kid, like he wasn't focused, and it was like, oh God. So Kaylee comes in, and I'm still kind of in kid mode, you know, like I have my basic sign language things that I'm doing for encouragement, and I'm handling her very slowly, like you do kids sometimes, and it was very clear that she was having none of that, and that she was not to be treated like a child at any point. she just she looked at everything immediately from the character's perspective, and there was none of this amateur hour stuff, you know. Like, I was instantly just like, I mean, I just knew that, like, she was going to be perfect. I mean, there was no question. She just blew everybody away. And I remember when we were shooting this scene, actually, she was always very serious. Like, when she was on set, it was, you do not treat her like a kid. She is a serious actor, and which she is. I mean, it's totally true. She's really great. But I remember I was like trying to get her to laugh. And so I remember right before we shot this, like, I have this little like dance that I can do. Like, I do this little kind of Michael Jackson-y kind of moonwalk dance, with a little spin. And I tried to do that in front of her to like get a reaction, and she was just completely deadpan. So I thought, you know what? I'm just going to leave her alone and just let, when she shows up, I'm going to let her do her thing, and I'm going to stay out of her way. And that's what I did. This was in Hawaii. Dumping rain on actors, always fun. Actors love that. This was actually at an airport. This is the same airport that they shot the boat scenes for Kong Skull Island. It's just the classic way you do these things. You take a big piece of tarmac, you paint over it, and then you put your things on it, and, green screen around the side, and you're good to go. This was actually one of the first like really cool pieces of concept art I remember we got. The shot of Kong reaching down to her, and the final version looks pretty much like it. I will say that we were a little sensitive to some of the lighting. I know that, like, we wanted to make sure that you could, see the monsters. We didn't want to get any complaints from anybody necessarily about, not being able to, dig into the movie because they, the monsters were hard to see. But, we have this rain scene, and, so there's a couple times where we're cheating the lighting a little bit. And I think the shot would have been, like, for instance, the shot of him touching her finger probably would have been a little bit better if we could have just gone a little darker. But, at the end of the day, it's like, let's see the monsters. Let's show everybody what we got. And, go from there. Which, by the way, I mean, like, this film originally, I think, had a lot more dark and rainy stuff in pre-production. And, I mean, it's just like, when you're doing art for this type of stuff, it looks really cool and it's very epic and apocalyptic. And, but we kind of slowly started moving away from that even before King of Monsters came out, for a variety of reasons. But this was sort of like one of the last remnants of that. And, actually, I should mention, like, that outside of the bridge, all those scenes, all those nighttime scenes with the rain, that's not green screen outside. That's all just real practical. Those are practical lights and rain on the glass, and it looks 100% convincing. And again, another nice low budget, if you can call it that, which it's not really, but lower budget than just putting a green screen and doing effect shots, because those effect shots, no matter what you're putting in them, are going to cost a lot more money than if you can come up with another solution. So again, this was in Hawaii here. I actually was staying on this street. My house was right down the road up there, so I was able to walk to set for the first time ever in my life. That was fun. You'll see that Julian's actually wearing a different Judas Priest shirt here than he is in the very next scene. And this is because this used to be a different day. Originally, they were going to be going to the pier, which was in the opening. This scene used to take place. This was like, I feel like maybe the second sequence in the movie after the failed mission. But we kind of reshot just a couple of these close-ups, just it's a little bit of both, like that's from the original shoot, that's from the original shoot. There's lots of scenes like that where in these first half hour where you get a little bit of the original shoot and then the 5-day surgical shoot. The van I was really one of Terry Rossio's idea. He ran the writers' room for this film. Really brilliant guy. Did like the Pirates of the Caribbean and Aladdin and those kind of things.
We had over 4 hours. Knock it off! Wait, this is the part I was telling you about.
The road has been marked. 1 or 2 gallons won't cut it. I need my bleach in bulk because spine test is real, people. I mean, come on, invisible.
That's how we found him. The bleach.
Bleach.
He consumes a ton of bleach.
He drinks bleach.
Showers with it.
Oh, yeah, I shower with bleach. No, what?
Prevention against organic tracking technology. See? Tradecraft.
Would have made more sense if you just drank it.
Come on. One more place.
Madison, this is getting old.
Hey, you sell bleach?
This isn't one of those internet challenge things. Because when I saw those kids, those detergent pods, I didn't know they were going to eat them.
I'm still dealing with the lawsuits from that.
Look, we're looking for a guy who works for Apex Cybernetics. Buys a lot of bleach, like every night.
He's probably paranoid, high-strung, doesn't like daylights. You know, has a lot of crumbs in his beard if he has a beard.
Okay.
This is Ronnie. He's really funny. His improv in this scene was just hilarious. He had so many different versions. Some of which I can't even repeat because they're a little racy, but pretty funny. Again, this is all Australia. This was right around the corner. You know, it's really funny when you're doing, film. You're constantly trying to find locations that are relatively close to each other because, no matter what size production you are, you have to still be able to move, quickly and efficiently from location to location. And so this was like literally like a couple feet away from where we just were, and now knowing that that's the way movies work, it's kind of funny because I remember I visited New York like about 3 years ago, and went to go see Sigourney Weaver's apartment from Ghostbusters, and I was really kind of fascinated by the fact that there's a bunch of other locations from Ghostbusters right around that corner from that apartment for the very same reason that I'm talking about here. But I won't talk about Ghostbusters anymore, even though I would love to. I just done Death Note right before this film, so I was like really on to the neon cafe look. And so this is part 2 of my neon cafe series. That one was blue in Death Note, and this one's red, which which one's better, I don't know, but this is one of my favorite kind of sets, and just from a simplistic kind of cool lighting standpoint. This is also kind of a turning point stylistically for the film, where we start slowly pushing the film into a more sci-fi, colorful, vibrant direction. I always wanted the movie to kind of not just thrust you into this crazy color palette, but to slowly pull you in. As the movie goes, we get more and more over the top in sci-fi, and the color palette's one of those things that really helps, and in the music as well. And that's something I've always done in a lot of my movies. Like if you watch The Guest, the tone of it gets more and more ridiculous as the film goes, but it grounds it at first in the beginning, and even the music gets more over the top, and that's always a good signifier to push the audience in a direction, of changing style, I think, and it really goes back to that whole, every movie I do is a musical thing. I think.
I think we can help.
This was one of those scenes where we only had a day, and I remember it was a little stressful going in, but everybody totally nailed it. When you're working with underage actors, you get so little time to work with them. I mean, like they have school hours, they have wait, real quick, I want to talk about this. This shot I've always on the fence on. Like I like him kind of smiling here, like every other time I watch this, I feel like, is this cheap? Like I wanted a moment where we weren't just beating Kong up, because this is a movie for kids really at the end of the day. And for me, I'm able to remember and tap in pretty well to the feelings that I had when I watched movies as a kid. And, you're filling in a lot of stuff in your head when you're younger, and things can be really dark, and at a certain point, I just wanted to make sure that it was like, that the kids can still enjoy Kong, and that he's not just sad and he's beat up. And it's maybe a little early in the movie to do that, but it was a point where I just felt like, you know what, we should show him at least enjoying something. He's getting fed, he's hungry, maybe he's still miserable on the boat, maybe he's a little messed up from those drugs. Maybe that's why he's smiling, but like, we need to give him a nice little moment. Originally right here, Skarsgård's actually looking, if you look at his finger there, he actually has a rubber band on his finger, and you can see it in the wide shot. And originally that's what he was looking at, because he proposed in the original opening to the film to his fiance, and he didn't have a ring, so he gave her this rubber band, and he's kind of that was a signifier that he was constantly always thinking about her in the movie, and that's one last little remnant of it there. And to Skarsgård's credit, I mean, like, that's one of those things where, it's really hard, when you're going into a reshoot and you have to tell an actor, like, look, your character's still the same, except for all the all the things, why your character is the way he is. But he understood the process, and it's for the greater good, and ultimately I think his character comes off great. He was fantastic to work with, both of these actors. This was one of the first few days on set, and it was really really cool to see them being able to chop it up together. They had just immediate, like, fantastic chemistry. And the line, nobody can keep the reins on Kong. I remember that in the first rehearsal we did of that, Rebecca said that line, and I instantly was like, oh, that sounds really good. Yeah, make sure you do that. She's such a professional. She could do anything. She could make any line sound legitimate. But a movie like this, you got to have those kind of big, ridiculous lines, and they don't actually come off as ridiculous when you're watching the movie. They're what they are. This was another one I was very excited to have somebody say, it's Godzilla. Yeah. That was one of those moments when you're shooting it and you're like, oh yeah, that's going to be the trailer for sure. If you see really closely right there, if you look closely, Rebecca has her hand on Kaylee's back when they're running in the room. And obviously Kaylee can't hear the cue, because really we're just counting to 3 and saying shake or something like that. And so Rebecca's actually tapping Kaylee on the back so that she knows, the timing. And so if you look really closely, Kaylee's like just like a couple frames behind everybody else. So finally, here we are. The exposition is over. We're at the monster fight. We don't have to set up anything else anymore. And from this point on, the movie is non-stop action, and thank God, because this is super sweet. This is why I'd made this movie. I wanted to make shots of Godzilla tearing things up. I wanted Kong to be ferocious. This is what it's all about. And you got to do a lot of work around it to get here. But these are the rewards. Every day you're going into VFX reviews. I love that scream. That's one of my favorite shots too. I love that kind of Cthulhu looking tail shot. Sorry, I'm gonna get like distracted watching this. Like I remember during production, whenever we were getting if you look closely right there, you can see a couple guys fly out the back of that boat. If you pause it, it's kind of Empire Strikes Back kind of idea, like the asteroid belt scene where you can see a stormtrooper fly out of the TIE fighter that gets blown up. Obviously, I'm not gonna like point out all the Easter eggs in the movie, but this is clearly a Jaws Easter egg. Jaws times 10. This sequence was always 100% in the outline, in every draft of the script. This was something that never changed. By the way, the way we did that with Skarsgård is we just pulled him on the ground, and those other guys were on cables and just moving the camera around. but this was always going to be sort of the big, Hoth set piece of the film. This was going to be the one to beat, and we kind of knew it going into it, because what I like about it is that it's not just, okay, here's a setting for the monsters to fight. The setting becomes really what the fight's all about, Godzilla, who already has an advantage just from being Godzilla, has the water, which, Kong is not good at dealing with. And, just that gives you so much interesting kind of, fodder to play with, as a director. It's not just like what the choreography is, it's how they're utilizing the environment. And that's what makes Kong such a unique character when it comes to monsters, is that he is just like a big human, basically. And so he can think like a human, and we can kind of project on him a bit more. I love the scale of this shot here. I just like Kong always looking kind of beat up and exhausted. I think that those are really, that's what makes a cool hero. You'll notice that there's a little bit of a similarity. We try to do this as much as possible between what the humans are doing and the last thing we saw Kong doing. Like, both Kong and Skarsgård are both getting up in the same shot. Whenever Kong's underwater, he's screaming, Skarsgård's screaming. We tried to kind of always tie in the human world to the monster world in subtle ways, so that it didn't feel like you were just randomly going from one to the next. I should also mention that we had like 5 days to shoot all that underwater stuff. So we have way more footage of that. That's why the few shots in there are pretty cool, because we had way more than enough time to do it, because everybody was so nervous about, oh God, we're going to do underwater stuff. It's going to go so slow. And it was actually a breeze for that reason, because we way overcompensated time-wise. Hirota written on the helmet there, that's Brian Hirota, who's the Scanline VFX supervisor. Scanline did this sequence. We broke up the VFX into a couple different companies, Scanline, Weta, and MPC. And Scanline got this sequence, Mecha Godzilla's intro, and the ending Mecha Godzilla fight, and they just did a fantastic job. I mean, these shots are just so dynamic and cool. This was the very first shot that we actually did of any VFX shot. Scanline actually created sort of a mock-up of this. It was different, but the very similar to what that ended up being. There's the bitch slap. This is one of my favorite shots of any of the VFX shots, actually, is Kong jumping off the boat, John McClane style here. You can see him down there at the bottom too, like in that wide shot. It's actually a continuation. If you look, you can see a little Kong continuing to jump. It's that kind of detail that's just so impressive whenever you get into all these the nuances of the VFX shots. It's just really staggering. Just even after all the VFX reviews and going frame by frame, still sometimes when I watch the movie, I'll notice one little detail that I'd never seen before. And the VFX supervisor of the film, DJ, he's such a big, just movie nerd and Godzilla fan, and we just had so much fun. Anytime we were doing shots like the John McClane shot, just little reference shots, we were just always, got so tickled, and we're joking about it, in those VFX reviews. One of the shots I forgot to mention earlier that's one of my favorite in the sequence, and it was one of the first shots that I'd kind of designed in my head, was the shot of Godzilla and Kong underwater fighting, and the aircraft carrier, plunging into the depths. And I just thought it would be cool to just leave the monsters for a second and then just see this aircraft carrier going down. It was, one of those things that, it's just an idea that, it kind of flows really fast in the movie, but it felt really interesting at the time. But I love this part. This is one of my favorite VFX shots in the entire movie as well. I love seeing Kong puke. water. I kind of wish we did more. At one point we had like fish and stuff flopping around, but it was just a little too over the top. It's like this is a dramatic moment, and it's already kind of funny seeing him vomit anyways. But I wanted it to stay serious. This is Kong might lose here, supposedly. Not that you really think that's going to happen, but and Godzilla, he's my interpretation, and maybe this is going to be controversial, but I don't think Godzilla is ever afraid that for a second he's going to lose any of these fights. I think that he's playing with Kong. I think that it's life and death for Kong. Kong's trying to stay afloat, but trying to stay alive. But at the end of the day, Godzilla's Godzilla. I mean, you can't kill Godzilla, basically. I think Mecha Godzilla comes close. I think maybe if he had blown that red beam down his throat, Muto style, that would have done him up. But potentially, who knows? We don't know what Godzilla's insides are made of. I mean, it might be just as strong. So who knows? But come on. I mean, Godzilla's on the ocean. I mean, look at him. He's like smiling here, like, right? He's having fun. Kong is not having fun. This scene, I should say, is this was inspired heavily from my cat Mischief, who she, like the way that Godzilla's acting here. This is how Mischief is every night, standing. I have like this kind of like full glass window porch, and we have raccoons in the backyard. And Mischief hates those raccoons, and they just and the raccoons are evil. They would come right up to the glass and they like taunt her. They're kind of scary and creepy. And they always have these like staring matches back and forth, and it's kind of psychotic. I mean, like you can tell Mischief just wants to murder those things, and even though I don't know that she would stand a chance, but that just image of the back of her head, looking out, was definitely inspired in that moment there. I should say, I remember every time we shot this, whenever he would say, how's Kong with heights? After a pause, Rebecca would always, kind of sarcastically be like, no, it's fine. He's fine with heights. This was one of our only one take shots. I'm pretty well known for, I guess, shooting way too many takes. And this one, we really ran out of time that day. And we just had one shot at it. And it's fine. This sequence actually was originally it was designed to be that we were going to put rubble in this little alleyway here, and all the the beams and stuff and like some of those things around them were going to be digitally broken up and things. And when we got here, the VFX department said, listen, we didn't budget for this. I know that you guys are saying that those are going to be VFX, but we don't know how you're going to do that. And we were like, okay, whatever. And, it was one of those things where I thought, we'll just figure it out down the line. I should also mention that Brian Tyree Henry is wearing a different outfit there because that was originally used from the opening. Again, repurposed footage. So if you look closely, he's wearing his outfit from the opening of the film. But we need a little extra piece of him breaking in just to make it more interesting. But so what we ended up doing with that VFX stuff is once we actually shot it and got it into the edit, nobody ever complained that it looked like that those things should be broken or that it looked weird that there was just random debris around perfectly functional equipment. And so we just left it in. And again, cost savings so that you can see. You want to put the money where the monsters are, like sometimes it's like, do we want to spend money on rubble or do we get an extra shot of Kong? I just loved, working with these actors. Every day on set with them was so fun. Like at first it was Millie and Julian, we shot a lot of their scenes alone. And, when you're working with younger actors, who, by the way, I say younger actors, but they're always just as good as the adult actors. I mean, skill is skill, talent is talent, or whatever. But, when you're working with younger actors, you really want the production value that you're getting from them is that they can do something that older actors can't. They can be kids. They are still kids, and you want that kind of energy from them. And so I have this philosophy that if they're having fun, it's going to come out on screen. And so, we always, I would let them just, they between takes are always like playing these weird, like, I don't know how to describe it. Like they had this clapping game that they would do. It was like patty cakes type of thing. And, and they're always running around and, like just having fun, and joking and being silly. And, I think some people might, try to push away from that. But I really think that, even though it might lose you a little bit of time here and there, you gotta keep the energy going, and everybody's got to have fun if you want that performance to be fun. And so I'm a strong believer in that. But it's funny because once Brian Tyree Henry got in the mix, it felt like, okay, we got an adult with these kids. It'll kind of focus the dynamic a little bit more. We're gonna not just be joking around and stuff. But then Brian became even more of a jokester. I mean, he's even more of a kid than the kids, and so it was like times 3 at this point. But it was one of those things where you just knew that it was going to really work, because we were always laughing on set. And so I love this part of the movie because I love that we're in these parallel trips. It's one of those things that when we were shooting it, we just knew things were working, or an editorial, we knew it was working because we have our future journey and we have our past journey. And there's so many parallels to, the way that these kind of cut back and forth that it's really super cool that it landed this way. And, I love that we were able to get sort of our King Kong versus Godzilla homage here. I should really quick say that that I think Doherty, whenever he because I showed Doherty like some of our artwork early on, and I think he was a little mad at me early on because I had a scene in Antarctica and he already did an Antarctica scene. I think he really believed that these movies should really be going into new places every time. But at the end of the day, it's like I can't imagine the opening to Hollow Earth being anywhere than Antarctica. I mean, I really believe in the old, Admiral Byrd, the myths that are really out there. And, I think there's something to that. So I couldn't put it anywhere other than Antarctica. This shot was really funny because my DP was sick. This was a different part of production where everybody got sick. We got hit with the worst, like swine flu, I think it was at the time. So we actually lost a couple days of production, and we at one point, I think we were like down 25-30% of our crew were hit with it. And so on this day, my the camera operator filled in as the DP, and that shot of Kaylee walking up with the big crane and everything, that was sort of an inside joke because my DP, he hates pointless or superfluous crane shots. And I was just like, oh man, he's not here. I was a little like, what are we going to do? And so almost, slightly because I just wanted to do it anyways, because I knew that at this point in the film, we needed a nice kind of epic shot to bring you back to the characters. But also kind of as a joke, I wanted to shoot the biggest crane shot of the entire movie when my DP wasn't there. And of course we filmed it off of iPhones and stuff behind the scenes, and then sent it to him like, look what we're doing today. But he wasn't there, so he didn't get a say. So we shot the big crane shot, and it's a good shot. So sorry, Ben. I mean, I will say Ben is such a great DP. He really grounded the movie. He's a guy who's a strong believer of not doing anything with the camera unless it's motivated, and you really need that in a movie like this to ground it, because when you're dealing with big monsters, you need something to anchor you, and the stylization of the film kind of has to be that. Real quick, talking about King Kong versus Godzilla again, with the helicopters lifting him up. I remember when I first signed on to this movie, one of the first things I thought is like, Well, I just hope we don't have like a silly scene where Kong is being lifted by balloons like in the original movie. And and that was literally one of my first thoughts I remember having of like, okay, that's one thing we're not going to repeat. Um, and sure enough, I was working with Terry early on, and we were trying to come up with like, okay, well, after this fight, how are they going to get Kong over to Antarctica, like, because Godzilla's in the way. Even though the fight's over, Godzilla's still out there. And I remember just being like, well, I guess what if they just get a whole lot of helicopters and lift them up? That would be kind of cool, wouldn't it? And it was like, yeah, that would be cool. And I was like, oh, great. Why did I say that? But instantly, once you see the artwork of it, it was like, oh, this is sweet, just all those helicopters and everything. Okay, so now we're in sci-fi territory. Love it. This is my first chance to do big sci-fi stuff, so I'm going all out already. This is our big Return of the Jedi shot. You remember with the Millennium Falcon. Obviously, the heaves have a little bit of a Akira influence to them. I knew that I wanted these anti-gravity craft to have sort of this weird emission that felt like the tracers from the motorcycles in Akira. Oh, this idea right here, I got to give credit again to Richard Bennett, the storyboard artist. He when he was boarding this scene, he threw in the whole little thing dropping the Alka-Seltzer into the glass, and as a way to just sort of prepping the audience a little bit, in a visual way of what we're about to go through. And that was his idea, and it ended up just becoming in the movie. So this is one of my proudest scenes. It's actually kind of a throwback to my very first movie, which I did for $3,000, called Pop Skull. And in Pop Skull, the main character takes a overdose of Robitussin. And he has a trip out sequence, and we use lots of strobing lights to affect the viewer in that same kind of way. So the effects that we were doing were designed to mess with you there. So it was really cool to be able to do that. A lot of those were inspired by effects that I even did on that low budget film. So now we're in Hollow Earth. Lots to talk about here. This went through a lot of changes. Originally, this was a much more dark and moody place. I remember thinking, whenever I first read the outline, whenever I came onto the film, it was like, I think Terry had written just a couple pages of outline of, a proposal of the movie, really is what it was. And I remember immediately being like, oh my God, we're making a Journey to the Center of the Earth movie. I don't know if I even like any Journey to the Center of the Earth movies that I've ever seen. So that was a little nerve wracking. Again, hadn't had too much experience with CGI. Is this going to look stupid? Like, what is the motivation of the lighting in the center of the Earth and this and that? But this really evolved over the course of the entire production to being more like, this has to, what we realize ultimately is that this has to feel like this has to be like the fantasy world for Kong. Like, this is like his real home. This is where he's going to thrive. And it needs to feel inviting in that kind of way. But what's cool about Hollow Earth is that it's got lots of different terrains, like many parts of the world. And so we weren't just restricted to doing this kind of jungle thing, which I think if we did, it would be a little, too familiar. But it's nice that we were able to kind of jump around and do lots of different things. This shot was something that, was later on put into the film as a way to try to describe the physics of it. I wanted to do something that was really nice and trippy so that you could see that, you can stand on the ceiling and all those kind of things. And actually, I had the idea for the way Hollow Earth would work in general one day when I was at my production designer. We had two production designers on this film. One was Tom Hammock, who has literally worked on every single movie of mine. And the other one was Owen Patterson, who worked on The Matrix, the original Godzilla 2014. And they were paired up on the film. And I was over at Tom's house, I remember, and, just started talking to him about ideas of what can we do in Hollow Earth. And, I realized, like, well, if you're in the center of the world, the gravity is going to be different. we don't have to abide by different rules, and that's whenever I started feeling really comfortable with the idea that okay, we are making a Journey to the Center of the Earth movie, in addition to everything else, Godzilla versus Kong. But the way we're going to make this really super cool is, this is my Robotech missiles. I love those. We're gonna do things like you've never seen before with the gravity and all that kind of stuff. This is one of my favorite VFX shots too. It's so dynamic. Weta did all this Hollow Earth stuff, and they're just really. I mean, obviously everybody knows Weta, and their work is just incredible. And I think I can't remember, but I believe that it was their idea to make this really gory, and we kind of just leaned into it. I think they kind of created sort of a proposal, previs for this, and or post-viz, I believe it was. And whenever they leaned into the gore, we just realized how hilarious and amazing it was just to see Kong just rip something to pieces. And I like these little guys. I think Tom Woodruff did these. Yeah, he designed the looks of these, and originally I wanted them to kind of be inspired by the end of Demon Seed. There was like this robot, thing that comes out of the ground, and that was sort of weirdly where this idea started, and they went totally, evolved in a different direction. But going back to Weta and the gory Nozuki death, we could have made that look a lot more disgusting and realistic, I think. But I like that it's very cartoony with the green blood, and there's some guts in there, but they're not disturbing. And the reason for that is like, this is a movie for kids, like I said, and I mean, it's obviously for adults as well. But when you're a kid, you get disturbed by things. I remember how it was. I didn't watch any horror movies until I was in, I don't know, like real horror movies until I was in middle school. I would watch things like Terminator and Aliens, but I don't consider that. Those are the gateway horror movies, the sci-fi ones. But I didn't want kids to be disturbed. I wanted them to be able to rewatch this film, and maybe they have to close their eyes, but it's not going to traumatize them. And so a lot of the violence in the movie, it's never too much in terms of that. This was something that I came up with in Hawaii. There was like I remember I was in the art room. We'd have these rooms set up with all of our concept art, and they were super cool to look at. I mean, incredible. Just to be surrounded by all this insane stuff. And I was in there one day just trying to think about Hollow Earth, like what are some cool ways that we can show off, the physics, and, make a really like dramatic moment, with Kong, having his own little moments here. You'll notice that we actually leave the human perspective entirely, and it's just Kong, as a character. And basically the point when he wakes up in Antarctica, I think that the movie really goes through a shift when his eyes open in that shot, because suddenly we're able to approach Kong even more as a character than ever before in the movie, and he kind of takes the lead at that point. Takes it from Skarsgård. Sorry, Skarsgård. It's like you can't compete with King Kong, but the thing about that shot is that where he's floating across to the rock hand, I just had this kind of visual of Kong floating between two mountains. And I went downstairs during lunch, and DJ, the visual effects supervisor, was down there. He always has his dog in a backpack, which is hilarious. And he was kind of walking around with his dog, and I went up to DJ and I kind of pitched him this idea, and he said, I love it. And DJ's really smart. He's done this a lot of times. He's working with Zack Snyder and all those movies. And so he knows that sometimes when you have these ideas that aren't in the script and might be hard to pitch, you got to just do them and show and get everybody used to them so they don't go away. And that's exactly what we did. They rushed it into previs, and we were good to go. So this scene, I should give credit to my friend Robert Wiley, who actually has some interesting connections to Demon Seed as well, speaking of. But Robert is kind of a metaphysical expert, a very mysterious magician fellow. but I brought him in specifically for this sequence because I wanted a different vibe. I wanted something that had sort of a, the ultimate depiction of what an harmonic death chamber would look like. And it's funny because like I remember Owen Patterson, the production designer, he was originally sketching out this sort of dome type thing because I described to him I wanted this to be almost like a satanic occult ceremony of Mecha Godzilla coming out, and what he drew was really cool, but it was like kind of what you would expect in a movie like this. And so I brought in Robert, and he sketched out this thing, which was these designs which completely make no sense, where it's like these jagged edges and you can't really tell what the curvature of this thing is. And he drew this thing to me, and it took me an hour just to wrap my head around what he was drawing. And then it took even longer for me to pitch it to Owen, because when you're trying to create this thing in a physical space, which you have to do, even in a 3D environment, I mean, because it's the same as creating a physical space. You have to create the architecture for it, and it has to work. But he was excited by that, and he took it, and we beat it out, and it's one of my favorite sets too. And speaking of this whole sequence, I love the red skull crawler. But it's funny how the skull crawlers are such like, they're like the movie's bitch now. It's like back in the 70s they were the big threat, but now it's just like, and we're gonna blow your face off. Originally they were in the opening too, and they just got blown up. Poor skull crawler. But I should give credit to Legacy Effects. They're the ones who made the ultimate design of Mecha Godzilla, and they came up with this design really early on. We had, probably almost 100 different designs from different companies, including Legacy, who created a ton of different designs, different artists there. And this one was by far, like, instantly when we saw it, it was kind of like, well, we got to beat that, and you just couldn't beat it. Originally, I think the only real difference is that the exterior was less of this sort of shiny gunmetal. It used to be more of a tank type metal. It wasn't as shiny, and it looked really fantastic. And I would have loved to have seen that, but brought to life in terms of a 3D asset. But what we ended up with, I think, is just such a gorgeous character. I love this whole sequence. It's basically Mecha Godzilla porn. The movie stops and just enjoys. Nothing really happens in the scene other than Mecha Godzilla blows up a skull crawler, but it takes 4 minutes to to do that, because the movie's just worshiping him. And I remember the first test screening we had, it was just, people didn't know that Mecha Godzilla was going to be in the film. I'm sure they suspected, but when he shows up, and it was still pretty rudimentary VFX, people were so excited. Oh, I should mention that shot right there. Again, cost-saving measures. That was actually done in editorial. Somebody shot it with their actual phone. That's a phone shot in the movie. And we just ended up never changing it because nobody ever noticed. But if you look at it closely, you can tell the frame rate's a little strange on it. So here we are. We're back in Hollow Earth, and this was one of the most challenging sections script-wise to get right. I mean, these Hollywood movies, they have 50 writers on them, and you hear about that, and you go, well, why do they have 50 writers? There's Vasquez Rock back there. Why do they have all these writers? What could they possibly be doing? And I can tell you from experience, what they're doing is they are beating their head against the wall, trying to figure out very specific elements of the movie. And it takes a long time for that to work. And eventually somebody just gets lucky when it lands in the right place. Obviously a little bit of a 2001 homage, with the Kong and the monolith here, the monolith entrance to this building. I love this set. This was one that, we kind of figured out early on. It went through a lot of different variations in terms of just being even more just kind of cave-like, but I like that we landed in a place that definitely you see the architecture of it. And this is obviously, if you're familiar with the Gritianum, this is built around this. And, I'm I'm really big into Rudolf Steiner, so that's one of the biggest influences on this movie in general. I mean, this movie is really maybe one of the first major Hollywood films with a Rudolf Steiner kind of background to it. Shots like this are really funny. Like I always think about DJ, the VFX supervisor. He would always say any shot is always improved with a spaceship in it, and he's totally right. Anytime you see a shot with Kong and there's just a spaceship, or in this case, same thing, the heave in the background, it always is cooler. So when in doubt, when you got the money to do it, throw a spaceship in and you are good. So this axe thing, I'm really proud of this because this was actually an idea that I came up with, and it ended up becoming, the whole drive of the film. Originally, during the R&D phase, I was just trying to come up with cool ideas, like what can Kong find in Hollow Earth that might give him an advantage against Godzilla. And, I sort of thought, whoa, what if he, in the script, it originally, he found a scepter down here and he kind of just had it in this scene and he kind of left it, before he went back up to Hong Kong. And I just love the idea of Kong finding this big scepter. But then I started thinking, well, is this an opportunity, to give him something else? And so the scepter became this axe. And I thought, this is where Godzillas are from. There's other creatures like Godzilla down here. And there's this big war and all this stuff. And so that's when I started thinking, well, if he had like an axe made with a Godzilla spike, that's cool. But it would be really great if this thing could absorb Godzilla's energy. That's the whole reason that these Kongs made them in the first place. And they did have an advantage because of that. And so originally that was just sort of a cool aesthetic idea that as time developed, it became kind of the main plot point of the movie. And, and even you look at the advertising, it's really funny because the axe became, there's Yoshima, the main drive for the film. And this was always a big point for me. This shot here, I remember this was one of the first shots I had Matt Alsop, who's one of our visual designers, who's worked on all these films. He does Star Wars movies all the time, and he works with Gareth on Rogue One and all that. But I instantly was just like, man, you gotta do Kong on the throne. I was like, that's gonna be like the one of the big concept art shots for the film. And so it was one of the first few that he did, and it was just striking in every iteration of it. So I love sci-fi hallways, by the way. This skull here is actually 100% real. That's a full set. You could walk in it, you could go under it, like the set underneath it. We actually originally had some scenes where they snuck in underneath the mouth. That was completely built in. The lighting is live on set. Really incredible when you walk out there. And this actually came from one of our meetings with Terry, my original assistant Gary. He actually came up with this skull idea. We were beating our heads trying to figure out originally like how the humans would communicate with the other humans in Hollow Earth from Hong Kong, and Gary kind of was like, well, like what about he's like, that Ghidorah's head has like kind of psychic abilities or whatever, and so we thought, oh, wait a minute, yeah, we could take, like we could have it where the humans sort of reverse engineer Ghidorah's skull and use it as a psychic resonant chamber using psionics and stuff. And again, Robert Wiley, he came in and helped me with the concepts of psionics and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, so that kind of came from there, and then again, just like all these ideas, they start out like something really small, and then they become a bigger plot point, and then that became like, well, what if we actually turned the skull into the actual piloting chamber for Mecha Godzilla himself? Because what cooler place are you going to come up with to pilot Mecha Godzilla than a Titan skull, especially Ghidorah's skull? So this is funny. Lance Reddick, who people who've seen my films, will recognize obviously from The Guest, and this was a nice little reunion. Originally he had a much bigger role, which is why it's kind of weird that Lance Reddick just shows up for that scene and I think one other shot in the movie. But glad to have him no matter what. He used to have a really cool scene because Lance is supposed to be the head of Monarch, and his name is actually Gillerman, which is a reference to the director of King Kong 76. But which I actually like. I really like that movie. That's one of my favorite King Kong movies. Even though some people don't love that one. But yeah, Lance used to have this really cool boardroom scene early on in the movie, a really stylized looking boardroom scene where they were debating going into Hollow Earth and all this stuff. And he was super cool. He had a cool outfit on too. Can't go wrong with Lance Reddick. I mean, you know, give him any line and he's going to make it sound really cool. So again, here we are. I mean, like if you look at this ground, it's funny, like the trailer's out right now and there's one of these shots overhead of this mural, one of the Yoshima later on swooping down, and nobody's really noticed yet so far in the trailers that those spikes are all made of different weapons from Godzilla. If you look really closely, they're all like really crazy different battle axes and lots of really great detail.
Oh, Godzilla responding.
Again, this was something always in the script, and this was one of our original concept arts of Godzilla blowing a hole in the ground that just always looked cool. That's an entirely CGI shot. Those guys are CGI. We actually shot it with actors, but for whatever reason, they ended up just throwing in CGI guys. I guess it was easier to ultimately blend it or whatever. This was the only part of this film at this point that was like kind of a big reshoot. Like just like when they get out of the ships and they have their little conversation here. I mean, they're talking about the radioactive energy source, blah blah blah. None of this makes any sense. It doesn't matter. We just need an excuse for them to do something, and they had to go somewhere. Funny enough, I was watching Disney's Atlantis recently. I hadn't seen it since it came out, and I was shocked that there's certain parallels to that film and this one. Like the discredited professor, is sort of like the Skarsgård character in that movie. They're looking for a power source in the middle of the earth, like Atlantis is very similar to, I think, what the Hollow Earth is and all those kind of things. So it's pretty funny that, those kind of things added up. This is the shot from the trailer that if you look closely, yeah, there's all these different weapons there. I guess I can see why people do the same thing. So yeah, now we're back on track. We're out of the some more of the reshoot footage.
Mr. Serizawa, start your engines.
The upgrade is untested. Once we get online, Godzilla will come straight for us.
He's been coming for us.
We bent over backwards originally trying to come up with these like logical excuses for the humans to go on this mission to Hollow Earth, and I don't understand it. I don't really know what Kong's doing or why he's actually going there or what anything that's going on. But all I know is that it doesn't matter, and we're here, and that's where we need to be. and I think the audience is going to feel the same, because ultimately they just want to see monsters battle each other and see some really cool stuff they've never seen before, and that's what we're offering. Yeah, this scene actually used to be a lot longer. Like, it was pretty funny. Like, Skarsgård did this whole like thing where he originally was trying to get the Yoshima's attention here, and he was calling it Big Bird or something, and this was a bit longer of a suspense piece, but eventually, just like everything else, he whittled it down and just get the core of what works. These guys actually were originally designed to be full-scale monsters, and the design of them was much more like an owl. They still looked very similar to the way they look now, but the impression that they gave you was like a wise old monster, whereas when we shrunk them down, we kind of turned them into little chickadees, and and I think that's fun in and of itself too. Oh, I love this. I love this music right here. Yeah, it's so cool. The kind of organ version of the Godzilla theme. Sorry, I'm getting sucked in. Sometimes that's the problem. Is like I wanted to make notes for the film before I came in here. But every time I ended up watching the movie, I would just stop taking notes and I would just start watching the film. And, because it's, even though I've seen it a gazillion times, to a certain degree, the VFX come in so late, you finish all that stuff so late, it's still so fresh. So I get so excited when I get to see all these effects done with all the sound effects. And, I get to really enjoy the movie just, I guess, like anybody else, So here we are rocketing towards what everybody is ready for. And, this is what it's all about, like it's Godzilla versus Kong. I love the fact that, I'm sure that people watching this film are going to be thinking, well, okay, we're in Hollow Earth. How are we going to get Kong together with Godzilla for this ending? And we just had Godzilla blow a hole in the ground. And it turns out that, that whole thing about, if you, drill a hole, straight through the earth, that you'll come out on the other end in China, however that's supposed to work. It apparently is real. And that's what we went with. Funny enough, that shot right there was one that I felt like we redid like 500 times, even though it doesn't look like it, but just to make it logical in terms of like the 1, 2, 3, those are the things that you never would ever think that is an issue, but you end up redoing things like that a gazillion times to get it right, just so that it, you don't have to think about it when you're actually watching the film. Brian Tyree Henry's so funny in this sequence. That's what's funny about, when you're doing these commentaries, is every scene has so many stories in it. Every shot has stories in it that I could tell. Cause movies take a lot of, time and effort, and you go through so many variations to get where you're going. And, it's such a journey, but, I just have to keep going, because right now we are finally at the big event. Yes. They are going to fight. Oh man. I remember whenever we had our first test screening, I had Robert Kirkman, who created The Walking Dead, come, and he was sitting beside me. I remember right before the movie started, he said, all right, how long we have to wait to see the monsters? And then, the first shots of Kong, and he just started laughing. I was like, yeah. So this was the very first idea I had for the movie. We were talking about Godzilla versus Kong as something that they were going to be doing. I remember immediately I was like, I just want to see Godzilla and King Kong fighting in a synthwave neon city, and that is 100% like my main drive, is that's something I want to see. And boy, the VFX department, they just really went all out in making this so cool. The Supertron looking city. And, and we don't really cheat too much, about where they are in the city. I mean, there is a logical path that they're actually going through, in terms of actual Hong Kong. I love that shot right there. Up, and here's the big homage to King Kong versus Godzilla. You got to get the tree scene in there. I would have liked to make it a little bit more ridiculous, but I think that it's just right. You don't want to go too far, because at the end of the day, we want to really take this fight seriously and get into it. Originally, there was a whole little section here that we ended up cutting where Godzilla tried to drown Kong. He stepped on Kong in the water, and Kong originally grabbed the axe underwater and was using it to get Godzilla off of him. But we cut it because we just felt like, this is something that we've kind of already seen before in this film, Kong almost drowning. And so it felt repeated. So we cut it out. Love that shot. One of my favorite shots in the sequence, him coming down the alley. And I love I got Junkie to throw in some of the electronic stuff. Oh, I love Godzilla laughing right there. Godzilla's having fun. I mean, like, he's not really worried about losing. He's really not. I mean, I know maybe it seems like he is at certain parts. He's got something to do. He's here to go get Mecha Godzilla and take him out. Oh, by the way, this was inspired by the Back to the Future ride, Universal back in the day. I showed DJ. You can find those old videos online of the ride, and so I told him I wanted it to feel like this. And this should feel like our version of that. But Godzilla's not worried about Kong. He's just having fun. Like he's here to get Mecha Godzilla. He knows that Mecha Godzilla is the threat. He maybe doesn't know what Mecha Godzilla is, but he knows that there's something here that he's got to kill. And he has no problem killing Kong, but at the end of the day, it's this is not his fight. He's like, okay, this guy thinks he's all that, and I'll show him up. I will admit he's probably pretty surprised for this to happen here, as he looks right here. Yeah, he looks pretty surprised. I love the breath. I love how the breath is backlit there. This was one of the last edition that we made in the film for VFX shots, because we wanted to get just one quick little glimpse of Kong, and we really didn't have time, so they had to get kind of crafty in terms of what they did there, but they made it really colorful and cool, and ends up being a really memorable looking moment. So this is one of the last of our little reshoot scenes. There was always a scene in here, but it was a little bit different. And we kind of changed this around, and it's a bit more straightforward. But the big difference now is that originally Mecha Godzilla wasn't going to become sentient. Originally he was going to be piloted the whole time. But we sort of realized after the fact that that wasn't totally super interesting, and it was going to be more compelling if Mecha Godzilla himself ended up being a character. And so him becoming self-aware, which, I mean, if we're going to do a movie about the dangers of technology and AI, you gotta get into the self-aware AI thing and where that's going to lead, right? So, but I just like mainly the idea that Mecha Godzilla gets to actually be another character in the film, and he gets to have a real personality. And this is after this is when we get to really get into that. And so here we are, the last bit of fighting between Godzilla and King Kong. It's like it goes by so fast. You want more, it's one of those things where it's like you get some solid fighting here, and I'm so happy with it. Like I think it could have used maybe just another little section. I mean, nobody would have argued with that, but I think every bit counts, and so there's not a wasted moment in it. Oh, I love that hit right there. Godzilla kind of gets the upper hand pretty quickly, and again, this kind of goes back to my whole thing, which is Godzilla knows he's going to win. He's like, okay, I'm getting done. The difference is now is Godzilla's really pissed off. He got hit in the face with that axe, and he's like, I'm over this. That's why Godzilla fights a little dirtier than we're used to seeing. He gets on the ground. He's not just taking it easy more. He's like, I'm going to kill this guy. He's really annoying me, and he's trying to take him out. And so yeah, I love these. These shots of him crawling around. It's something a little bit different, that we're not used to getting to see. Again, this was me, like should this have been gorier? Probably, but I didn't want it to be too disturbing. I like that Kong gets one last hit in there, and then Godzilla's like, nope. So this is really like, when you're making a Godzilla and King Kong, film, like this is what it's all about. The shot of Godzilla and Kong facing off, and you know what? Like you would think that the one of the main issues that we would have in the script would be who's going to win. You'd think that would be one of our main things, but that was never. There's a little bit of blood on Kong's mouth there on the other side. That's as gory as he gets, really. I love this. Sorry, it's so hard to talk about everything here when all this is going on in front of you. But I get teary-eyed sometimes when I watch that part too. Especially the first couple times I watched it with the sound and everything. But the question of who's going to win. Oh God, this part is so cool right here. Oh yeah, and I love the score. It's so dramatic. I hope that somebody makes a like you lose or fatality or like a video game thing, because that's what this always makes me think of right there. Like you lose. But yeah, the thing is it was never a question really of who's going to win or lose. Like I came into this thing, knowing that Godzilla had to win. I mean, I remember when I was on the playground. I guess it was somewhere between first and second grade. And I remember, some of my friends coming to school and they were talking about who would win in a fight, Godzilla or King Kong. And at the time, nobody really totally bought that original film for whatever reason. Nobody felt like it was canon. Maybe it's because King Kong looks so different because he wasn't stop motion and all that stuff. So it kind of felt like a different character, kind of going back to what I was saying earlier in the film about keeping Godzilla the same so that it felt like we were getting a definitive match. But I remember one of my best friends saying that King Kong would win. I was so offended by that. It was like, how is King Kong going to beat Godzilla? I mean, Godzilla is unstoppable. He's Godzilla. And so the second I got hired on this film, I was like, I'm going to win that argument from second grade right now. You know, this is going to put that to bed once and for all. But I also knew that like this was a film where, you know, Kong is going to be the main character of the movie, really. I mean, and I love Kong. I mean, in many ways, you know, I prefer Kong in this film over Godzilla. You know, I think he's such a cool character, but I knew that, you know, he needed to have his own victory, but it was pretty clear to me that, this is a Big Trouble in Little China reference with the electricity. We actually had the VFX department watch that for that. But I knew that Kong's victory is going to be the Rocky victory. You know, you don't actually have to win to be a winner. It's about not giving up. And Godzilla respects that in that moment. That's what's going on there is Godzilla could kill him. I mean, we've already set up early on that if Godzilla thinks he wins, you know, he doesn't have to kill you. You know, he can kind of, you know, walk away, you know, just like he does at the boats. But I think there's a genuine moment of respect with Godzilla and King Kong in there, where Godzilla sees that Kong's not going to give up. He knows that he's won, and I love that. I love that kind of nonverbal dialogue that the monsters get to have. And now we have Mecha Godzilla, who is the biggest jerk ever. I mean, he just comes out of this mountain and starts murdering everybody. I mean, like, this is a bad guy, and he's got to get taken out. I love his little laugh here. That was something I asked Jay Jennings, one of the E Square sound guys, to do. By the way, E Square, just unbelievable. This sequence is awesome. They were always really big proponents of, you know, getting gaps in the sound design. They did the other Godzilla movies, and really brilliant guys. You know, they were always like, we got to find places where we take the music out and it's just the sound effects, and we create these different rhythms, because you don't want to just beat people over the heads with just all this crazy stuff, because there's going to be a lot of loud noises. And at a certain point, you get kind of desensitized to it. And so you have to kind of find these like palette refreshers of audio. And fortunately, also the kind of motif we're doing here with Gia coming up, you know, being able to, you know, go into her head and sucking out the sound, making it much more impressionistic, gives us the ability to, again, like I said, you know, refresh the palette, the sound palette. Boom. Yeah, so this scene used to be much more of a Godzilla and Mecha Godzilla, you know, battling it out, and there was a lot more give and take, and ultimately it just didn't work. It was like, at the end of the day, the only thing that that really made sense to show in this part was Godzilla just getting his ass handed to him. I mean, Mecha Godzilla is designed to take on Godzilla, and Godzilla, by the way, I think would probably do a lot better in this fight if he hadn't have just gone a couple rounds with Kong. I mean, Godzilla's pretty tired. I mean, he hasn't had a chance to really slow down this entire movie. I mean, presumably he's been swimming around and, you know, going nuts in the ocean when he's not on screen. And so when Mecha Godzilla comes out, they just, you know, he doesn't have a lot of reserves left in him, you know. And so it's a bit unfair. I like this set in general. It's, you know, it's really, this is a Godzilla set, you know, with lots of destruction. This is one of those things where, you know, you get to do in a Godzilla movie. You look forward to doing, you know, this type of thing. And this was the biggest soundstage at Gold Coast, and we filled it up 3 different times. This was also like the same soundstage we used for Hollow Earth whenever the characters are on foot there. We did 2 different streets. We did this street and then the one at the end. We just reused this and redressed it with trees and all kinds of different debris and stuff. covered up different buildings in really resourceful ways, and we're able to do that. And then also the Mecha Godzilla chamber when the kids go in there. Again, same big soundstage, and just, it's really staggering sometimes when you're making a movie like this where you're just building all these incredible sets, and they're just gorgeous. They could be in museums, really. And you're done with them, and they take a hacksaw to it and cut it to pieces and throw it away, and and that's that. And so all this money, all these resources, ultimately, it's to go into this sort of this thing that only exists on screens, which is really unbelievable. I love this sequence. This to me is like a moment for, almost to me, it's beyond just what's going on in the movie. It's a moment where the film is kind of recognizing the kid audience is out there and saying, like, okay, I know this is a little scary, Godzilla's getting beat up, Kong's hurt, but it's almost like trying to recognize, that it's going to be okay. We're still having fun, and we're back on it. Okay. I remember when we were doing this battle sequence, the entire time I kept, I don't know why I was so resistant to this. I was like, I just felt like it would be too cliche to have them shoot their beams at each other. And, oh, by the way, when we did this shot right there, the VFX guys, when they showed it to me originally during one of our reviews, they put like some sound effects of opera over that, and it actually sounds like Godzilla's like, oh. It's pretty funny. But I was really resistant to that, and so that was one of the last little sequence in this, and then eventually, like, we just ran out of ideas. We just couldn't think of any other cool things for Mecha Godzilla to do, because we were constantly trying to think of, like, what are some really interesting attacks he can do. And ultimately it was like, okay, well, maybe we should just try them shooting beams at each other, just see what it looks like. And then of course they put it together, and it's awesome. And so that's what's in the movie. This is what our Kong is. He's Lethal Weapon 2, popping his arm back in his shoulder. He's fun, that's what this is, and boy, I mean, post COVID, that's, we had no idea that this was coming, but that's what I think audiences want. They just want to have fun. And boy, would it have been a downer if Kong had died in this film. I'm all for stakes and everything, but this is a movie that's supposed to be fun, and it's a movie that I want you to watch over and over again, because that's how I experience movies. When I like them, I watch them over and over and over and over, including this one, apparently, because I've done that quite a bit. So yeah, so I think that maybe he could have taken Godzilla out here. I don't know. I mean, it seems at least plausible in an interesting way. A nice little throwback. Originally this was just going to be the way that he took out Mecha Godzilla, is that he was going to do this, and he was actually going to clamp Mecha Godzilla's mouth together and is going to internalize the beam, and that's going to be how Kong was going to destroy him. But we were like, they got to team up. You got to get the tag team. I love this. I love that they just humiliate Mecha Godzilla here. Look at him. Like, he looks embarrassed. Like, he's a little flustered here, but now he gets it, he gets it back together. Boom, and then Kong goes down, and then wham. Boom, man. You got to feel sorry for Godzilla. I'm sorry for all the Godzilla fans. Listen, I came in this as like really Team Godzilla, as you know, but ultimately Godzilla really gets beat up a lot in those old movies. It's really funny if you look at Godzilla sliding off of that building in that last shot. It's actually kind of humorous the way he kind of faints. But yeah, I mean, he gets beat up a lot, I mean, that's Godzilla's thing is like, if he can't win the fight, he's like, you know what, I'll just like tire you out from like beating me in the head, and then I will murder you mercilessly, and I won't have a scratch on me at the end of this. And so I think other than that one moment, I think he pretty much had it under control. This was actually inspired by some movie I saw in the early 90s. I can't even remember the name of it. I remember like a commercial that used to really scare me. It was like a guy had like a big fan and he's like about to attack somebody. It was a scary looking horror movie. I literally don't even know what the movie is, but it always stuck with me as a kid. Like somebody like trying to like cut somebody's face up with a, like a fan saw thing. Yeah, this is the moment right here, the alley-oop moment. Get it? Oh yeah, like this was actually kind of inspired by that Nozuki scene, because when we were trying to think of like, okay, how are we going to make this really dynamic, I started thinking about that movie Sanjuro, where there's like a samurai fight at the end of the film, and this guy gets smashed or like slashed and shoots blood out everywhere. And so I thought, oh, this is an opportunity because it's Mecha Godzilla. We'll just put like black oil like it's blood, and we can make this like a gory samurai death scene mixed with Mortal Kombat Sub-Zero. This should also be another like you lose moment. Yeah, but like, I it was such a great opportunity to just like have a gory moment that's not actually gory, so it's not disturbing, and also just Mechagodzilla really, really had it coming. I mean, he has so many cheap moves in that fight. I remember DJ always saying, "Man, Mechagodzilla is just a dick," and that's sort of the vibe that we always went with. I love Kaylee helping him up. Like, it's like she's not really helping that much way down there, but it's pretty adorable. So this was the redress set that we did. Obviously there's big green screen back there, but that's what that city is. But all the little trees and stuff. This was the same set that we shot the other part on. We just lit it differently. But the trees make it feel different, and all the extras running around, of course. I love these like kind of like tie up scenes at the end of films where everybody kind of meets up, and we sort of have our kind of cathartic, like, okay, the police are here and the fire department, and all good movies kind of end this way. All good action movies, in my opinion. It's like the Ghostbusters ending, really. That's what this sort of reminds me of. I love their costumes. I forgot to mention Ann Foley did a great job on all the costumes in this movie. The Hollow Earth suits are just so cool. Originally I wanted them to be silver. I was thinking of like Predator 2, the costume that Gary Busey wears when they're trying to take out the Predator, and I think Anne hated the idea of doing silver costumes, and she pushed me towards the gold, which I reluctantly did, but she was right. It actually works really well. And also I think the silver would have been kind of against the color palette that we were going for. So, you got to listen to those costume designers, because they definitely have, the good ones have really strong opinions, and and they're usually pretty right about them, if they're really good, which she is. This is a nice epic shot in the trailer, giving away the ending. Can you believe that? I love the nuance on the bone, the red interior bone. I've seen some people kind of talk about, the Muto's bones and those kind of things. But I think that that's like a Godzilla type bone. I think that's what Godzilla bones looks like to me. That's sort of the thought. I don't know if it's Godzilla's dad or mom or just something that was like Godzilla. You see that Kong has like a tic-tac-toe game on his chest now. I wonder if that's going to carry through to if there's ever any sequels. So this song, actually, I'd never heard this song before until I was in the office one day. I had my Spotify on Elvis Presley channel, and I left the room, and it starts bringing up other artists, and And I came in and this song was playing and I was like, good Lord, what is this song? This is awesome. And, you know, kind of designed this ending around it.
So silence angel, go to sleep.
Doing this movie was really a culmination of, you know, a life's work for me. You know, I got into films wanting to do, you know, big sci-fi epics, the Star Wars films, Terminator films, Alien films, Predator movies, Back to the Future, all those things, Indiana Jones. Those were all the movies that really inspired me growing up, and that's what made me want to get into film. And, you know, as somebody who kind of just started out in Alabama with no real, you know, ties to the film industry, it's interesting because you can't just start here. You can't just say, well, I'm ready to do Godzilla versus Kong. Who wants to hire me? You know, you gotta prove that you can do it. And so I started on very small productions and slowly worked my way up. I was really into Robert Rodriguez. His book Rebel Without a Crew was like my Bible in high school. I remember I ended up actually dropping out of high school my last year to go to film school. I went to a 13-month film school course called Full Sail in Florida. And I did that just because I wanted to get that out of the way. But, you know, as soon as I got out of film school, I made, you know, a really bad slasher movie, which no one's ever seen. Well, you know, no movie's really bad. It's really fun. It's gory. It's super gory. Bill Moseley's in it. Some good performances, Tom Told. I don't know why I'm plugging Homesick right now. But you know, I did that movie, and then I realized that I didn't really know how to make movies really that well. I just had jumped in, and so I made this other film called Pop Skull, which I mentioned, for $3,000 with just some friends of mine, and from there, you know, sorry if you're bored of me giving you my whole backstory about how I came to doing this film, but you're going to hear it because there's a lot of credits. There's a lot of VFX artists. There's like 7, 8, 10, 20 minutes. I don't know how many credits there are, but so basically, like, I did this little $3,000 movie, and that's what really got me, you know, noticed, you know, got me a manager who I'm still with today and an agent and all that stuff. And so from there, I really, you know, that was back 2005, and I finished that movie in 2007, took 2 years to make it for no money. And then I just started progressively meeting people and working my way up over the years. And to the point where I was finally able to get bigger and bigger budgets. And, you know, my first, you know, big budget movie was $70,000. It's called A Horrible Way to Die. Simon Barrett wrote it for me. And I remember having a conversation with my DP on that film. It was a friend of mine from Alabama. I remember he showed up to shoot that movie, and I remember talking to him like, can you believe that we have tricked these people into giving us $70,000 to make this movie? You know, like 100% serious about that. That felt like a fortune to us. And so over the years, I kept building up in budgets. You know, Your Next was about $500,000. I think 700,000 all in. You know, The Guest and Blair Witch were both about $4 million. And then, you know, Death Note was sort of my first, like, you know, stepping stone to a bigger budget movie that was all in, you know, about $28 million. And so I was finally at this point where, like, okay, I have an idea of what most budget levels look like. I've had a little bit of experience with VFX. And so when it came to doing this movie, it was one of those things where it's still like, okay, well, you know, $28 million is one thing, or 30 million, whatever it ended up being. But what does a $200 million movie look like? I had no idea because I'd never even been on a set of a $200 million movie. And so I remember I was invited out to go see a couple days on Darty, you know, as he was shooting King of Monsters, and he was nice enough to let me come and check it out. And I was so nervous going there, just I didn't want to be in the way of anybody, you know, like, but I was kind of impressed right away that it's like, okay, you know, at the end of the day, this is big budget movie, and there's a lot of things that go with that. But at the end of the day, the core group around the camera is essentially the same. I mean, you still have the same amount of people, standing around the camera. You can only fit so many people around there. And there's a lot more people around the periphery of the set, but essentially, and the sets are bigger and more impressive, but ultimately, movies are a very simple thing when you boil it down. You got a camera and you got to put things in front of it. And that's all it is. You got actors in front of the camera. Yeah. Look at all these VFX, artists. Incredible. I just want to pay tribute to everybody who worked on this movie. I mean, everybody did such an incredible job, and I'll never meet most of you, but I'm forever indebted to you for really bringing all your talent and everything. But yeah, I mean, like when it comes down to it, movies are just, getting things in front of the camera and shooting it. And it doesn't matter what the size of the budget is or anything. There's still it's still a very small, simplistic thing at the end of the day. And that's why it's really funny when you think about, repurposing footage in a movie like this, which, like I said, I mean, I didn't even nearly point out all the places where we cleverly took shots from scenes that were originally designed for one other purpose and reused them in a different way. You just have to be resourceful no matter what the film is. It doesn't matter if it's Godzilla versus Kong or, something super tiny. It's movie making's, it's a wild thing. Yeah, so I'm just going to wrap it up at this point. There's no point of me trying to fill anything out, but there's a lot of people that I didn't really mention, who really were integral into making this film what it is. And I feel bad, we had great producers. We had, the AD department was incredible. And I should also give a special shout out to right there, Matt Pusty, who's making Venice. I give him a credit because he did all those original score pieces that we didn't end up using, and Robert Wiley, obviously. Also, I wanted to give credit to the special thanks to the MonsterVerse directors, and they all deserve it because they really set this thing up. And this is a sequel. This is a true sequel to what they did. All right, thanks everybody for listening. Hopefully this wasn't too boring or ridiculous, and I hope I didn't say and you know what I mean and all those kind of things way too much, and it wasn't really annoying. All the best. Goodbye.